Welcome back everybody to another one in my time-lapse model build videos. And in this particular video, we're going to be looking at the 1/48 scale Hobbycraft Avia. And I do, even though I'm not ready, I have the box out here. So this is what I am building. Now the Avia was a post-war Czech-built version of the 109G, and they ended up running out of engines, and they used a different engine, the Jumo 004 engine that would have been used on the HE-111, got added to this aircraft in order to continue production. Didn't work out too well. Low power, high drag, turned into a bit of a pig. And eventually the Isreali Air Force bought a few of them and used them in the immediate post-war years right after their country was formed in some of the wars that happened. And I will be building it up in the Israeli markings that come in the box. Now this was built out of box. It is everything I did on this came straight out of the Hobbycraft box. And I mean, it's a bit of a pig. I used that word twice, I'm sorry. The model itself is not very good. It takes a bit of effort. Fit is bad. Some of the details a bit soft. Cockpit's almost non-existent. So you got to do a bit of work. You got to kind of pick your battles. You eventually get kind of a decent model at the end, but you do have to work for it. Now, that being said, before we get too far into this, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. Just before we get too far in the video, I do want to thank everybody who's out there watching this video. If you like what you're seeing and you haven't yet, down below, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. All of that helps the channel, helps everything grow. Now, if you want to take that next step, if you want to help out a little bit more concretely, if you want to do a little bit of a monetary help to this channel, down below you'll find a link. You can head over and you can buy me a coffee. I always have a coffee on the go. I almost always have a coffee on the go. It's already ice cold because it's been sitting around for most of the day, but it's still a coffee and I'm still drinking it, and every little bit helps. But please don't feel obligated to do that. This isn't the point of the channel. The point of this channel is for me to have fun and for you guys to have fun out there watching me when I do this. So that being said, let's get right into this. We'll see this Hobbycraft Avia get built, and we'll see you on the other end. And as usual with these aircraft models, I do start on the cockpit, and similar to when I built the Bouchon, the cockpit on these things, being a Hobbycraft kit, are not very detailed, a lot of soft detail, and you're pretty much guessing where some of these detail pieces are actually supposed to be mounted, so you kind of do your best to make it work. But I do get the cockpit built up and painted, and then we move on. So here we are, a quick mid-build checkup on the Avia. You'll see that it is ready for the final assembly of the fuselage, and I've got all that cockpit done, painted, ready to go. There's not much to it with these Hobbycraft kits. You'll see the main tub is done. Pretty basic, softer detail, but at least it looks okay when it's all put together. Similar to the Bouchon, if you were watching that video, it's going to be built with the wheels up on a stand, cockpit closed. So there's a lot of this detail inside that will be hidden
underneath the canopy. So it's just enough detail to be able to look in and see kind of what's going on, but not enough to really make a big difference, and it's Hobbycraft, so I'm just happy that it is, you know, looking as decent as it does, all things considered. So the instrument panel itself goes into here. I'll be putting that on a little later in the construction process, figuring out exactly how that fits, but I'll be taking care of that soon, starting to get these fuselages glued together and getting ready for the rest of the airframe, including the wings and everything, and then getting ready for paint. So it's moving along, we're getting there. I can see also the instrument panel. This is the armor plate that fits inside the canopy and kind of goes behind the pilot's head. I believe it closes down somewhere right about here, but it fits up inside that canopy and opens up with the canopy. So in these cases you won't see it. On the other ones with the canopy open, you'll see that armor plate sitting inside the clear canopy. So we're getting there. So as always, stay tuned. We'll start to see this assembly happen, get the fuselages glued together and start getting some more of these details all put together. So stay tuned, and we'll catch you on the next update. And then here you see I get the fuselage glued together, and as usual I kind of start on one end and slowly work my way around and use the Tamiya extra thin. That ensures that I limit the number of steps. If you glue the whole fuselage in one piece and there's a bit of a kink to it, you might get a step on one of the seams. If you slowly work your way around, you can ensure that those steps don't form, and it's much easier at the end to clean it up. You'll then see I move on to the wings. I start getting the holes drilled for whatever I need to mount under the wings. Particularly in this one, it's the cannons. So I get that done, and then we start the process with a little bit of puttying and sanding on the fuselage and trying to get some of the worst of the seams cleaned up before I do the full assembly. And then here, as I glue the wings together, similar to other ones, I glue the center section first, and then I start to use the tape to pull the wingtip up and then I glue that wing root seam on the top, and that limits the amount of putty and sanding that you need to clean up that seam. And here you see I start working on the landing gear, and as I do plan to build this one with the gear up, it involves a little bit of modification as the kit was not designed to have retracted gear. So the gear doors have an overlap where I need to cut apart the two halves and then glue them back together at the proper length in order for the gear doors to fit. And then the wheels themselves need to be sanded down a little bit as they are slightly too thick for the wing, the opening in the wing itself. So I get all that done, and then you'll see I start painting and getting these wheels glued into place. And then here you see I get the masking started. It's typical, just Tamiya tape with a sharp blade and a bit of backlight in order to trim the tape to the right size. Again, if you want to see a good in-depth look on how I do this, take a look at the top there. You'll see a link to my tips and tricks video on canopy masking and how I pull this off. And once I do get these gear all ready to go and it's pretty much ready for primer, I need to mask off the wheels so that I don't overpaint what I've already painted. So you'll see I just used a little bit of Tamiya tape and a little bit of Kleenex, and I just fill that little hole in, and then I can get the primer done, and then we can move on to paint.
So here we are, quick mid-build update on my Hobbycraft Avia. Here it is. It's all painted in the overall RLM 02. Looks a little odd, to be honest, but that's what the instructions called for, so I'm going to go with it. I had a bit of issues. My airbrush was acting up. Turns out I had a little bit of a bent airbrush needle tip, which I had to replace, and I also had some problems with some buildup inside the airbrush. I cleaned it all out, and later colors came out really nice. This one ended up being really splotchy when it painted, but to be perfectly honest, at the end of the day, I like it. It gives it a little bit of texture to the paint, and I think once I do some weathering, this one's going to be, I don't want to say heavily weathered, but significantly weathered. I'm going to make it look like it was, used in combat during one of the many conflicts that Israel had, especially around the time that they had this early in its life. So I'm going to go through and weather it pretty heavily, and really make it look used and abused. And I'm hoping that it should, again, hide some of my sins, and we'll make it look the part. So that's where we are on that. So my next steps on this, I'm going to seal it, bit of future, get that done, get the decals on, and then I'm going to go ahead and do some weathering. I still got to paint the spinner. I believe the spinner was red on this one, so I have to do like a white base coat and then the red spinner, and I got to paint the prop, so I got to deal with all of that a little later. Figure out kind of where I'm going with that, but we're coming right along with that. I still have to drill the hole on this. I'll show you that when I get to it. I'm using a step drill, so instead of a standard drill bit that kind of like pulls and twists, this grinds along the edges, and it shouldn't blow apart my seams. We'll see if I can make it work. So stay tuned, and we'll see some more updates and progress on that Avia.
Now, just before we do start the decaling, I get a clear coat done. This is just the simple Future floor polish. I think it's been renamed today. I think it's Pledge with Future Shine or something like that. It's changed its name a few times, and I haven't bought a bottle in a few years. And then we do step into the decaling, and I'm just using the kit decals with the Solvaset, and they went down beautifully. There's no issues at all considering it's Hobbycraft, and the age of the kit, I was expecting to have to fight them, but they went down beautifully. As always, if you want to see a bit of an update, not an update, a how-to on how I do my decaling, at the top, there will be a link to my tips and tricks videos showing how I get the decals done.
time for a quick update on the build status before we go to the next step. And as I'm sure you've seen if you've actually been following the video and not just playing this in the background as background noise, I am ready to weather. I have the aircraft done, decals are done. Here it is. So at this point, I'm basically at the weathering stage. I don't know quite where to go with this. I think I'm going to do a little bit of a regular weathering. You know, the standard black wash, the standard exhaust staining, give it, you know, a standard weathering job. I feel like in the heat of the moment when the Israelis would have been using these in combat in, I want to say it was 1947 or 1948 or 1949. I'd have to do the research again. Let's see if I can pull it up quick. I want to say it was 49 when they were using these in combat. I feel like they wouldn't have cared about cleaning the aircraft, right? It would have been dirty, it would have been used, it would have looked nasty. Part of that was when I painted it, I had that airbrush issue, and the paint kind of came out a little random and fuzzy, but I think at the end of the day, it works. Yeah, I think it works. I think it gives it a little bit of a look that it needs. So I'm going to go with it, and I'm just going to black wash, and then add some exhaust staining to it, and then go with that, see how it looks. But yeah, I'm very happy with how it turned out. The tail decal had a little bit of issue with it folding over, but I was able to paint up the difference, and I think with the weathering you're not going to notice. I was worried when it was done, it looked a little sparse. It wasn't looking very good, but I think the decals really set it off and give it the look, and I think the weathering, everything will vary the color enough that it shouldn't look too bad. I still have to drill the hole. I should have done that a while ago, but I got to drill the hole still, get that mounted on its base. Yeah, finish the bases. I still have to finish the bases on that, and then I mean really there's not much left. I've got the prop, spinner, and the tail wheel, so the prop and spinner just gets assembled and plopped on. The gun barrels need to be painted, the tail wheel needs to be assembled, and I think that's pretty much it, other than weathering those final little bits and getting it mounted to the base. This is pretty much done, so it's going to look really good. I'm very happy with how it turned out. No real issues at all. I mean, I shouldn't say that, it's a Hobbycraft kit, so there's a lot of seam work, a lot of cleanup and sanding that needed to get done to hide a lot of the gaps. But at the end, it looks good, and it really wasn't that much work. You know, no more than, say, a monogram kit or anything else like that. So it turned out really well. Super happy with that. And stay tuned. You'll get to see the rest of this happening and see a final product at the very end. So that is my current status on this Hobbycraft Avia S-199.
And for weathering, I'm just using the simple tempera paint, black tempera paint. I just wipe it on, or sorry, brush it on, and then I wipe it off, and it's just enough to fill in all the little piano lines and the corners and whatnot to give it a bit of depth to the color. And very, very easy to do. And because of the future layer, it does not affect any of the underlying decals or anything, so it's super easy to apply. If you don't like it, just wipe it off and start over. And here you see I get the bases prepared. This is just a simple pre-cut base from Michaels. Bit of stain, a little bit of clear coat, and then I use just a brass rod just to mount it up. So it takes not very much at all to get it all together, and then a bit of epoxy to hold it all in at the very end. And
And then here you'll see I get the flat coat completed. A couple of things I got to do after the flat coat, specifically things like the pitot tube and the exhausts in steel. And then it's just a matter of pulling the masking off and getting this glued to its base, and then it's finished. So here we'll take a quick look at some of the wrap-up pictures of the final product, and that is the end of this build.
Thank you for watching, guys, and as always, if you are interested in any of the content you see, you can access my website at www.seans-aviation.com. You can see all the latest pictures of aircraft and museums and the build logs of all of my current models and past models on that site. And if you're interested in any of this content, please click the subscribe button here on YouTube to follow more. Thank you very much, and see you guys next time.